All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. It is 6:35. Like I said, some people said they were going to be late, so we will allow them the chance to get in here. I'm going to go around and do a quick check-in. I see a couple new faces. Welcome to our group. We get together third Tuesday of every month and chat about church safety. What I'd like you to do is just go around really quickly, since we do have some new faces. Say your name, say you're from, say where you're from, and a little bit about yourself. So everybody that's new that's here, Angelia, I am with Church Safety Toolkit, and our objective is to work with churches on church safety and to have these conversations once a month to engage churches of all denominations. So if we want to just all go around for a second and say our name and what church we're from or organization or affiliation. Start anywhere you want. Mary, I think you're talking, but you're on mute. There you go.
Hi, I'm Mary Akron. I'm from. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm Mary Akron. I'm from Village Point Church in Elk Grove Village.
Great. Thanks for being here.
I'm Gary Force here, also from Village Point Church. Hi, Mary.
Hi.
I'm Denise de Guzman. I'm on the board of Church Safety Toolkit.
My name's Connie Zub, and I'm on the board of Church Safety Toolkit.
Nick Dillon, on the board of Church Safety Toolkit, and in Dallas, Texas. I currently attend the Potter's House.
He's at a really small church.
Yeah,
Right.
very small.
I know. I think LaDonna's still traveling, so I see her picture there, but I know she texted me and said she was still en route home, so hopefully she can join us.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I'm on a shuttle, so it's a little noisy. I am still traveling. My name is Ron. I am a member of All Nations Worship Assembly of Chicago, and yeah, I guess that's pretty much it.
Okay. Well, thanks for being here.
You're
So-
welcome.
Anybody want to open us up in prayer?
Yeah, I'll do it. Lord, thank you for the technology that we can use to share your word. Look down upon our meeting, that we follow the path that you have set out for us. We want to be a welcoming church, but also a safe church. But we also know that you are the ultimate protector, and we rely and praise you for this. In your name we pray.
Amen. Thank you. I thought I saw your pastor for a half a second, Gary, but I think he left.
Yeah, where'd he go?
Oh, for some reason, I use the church account and his name shows up. So I have to change it every time I go on.
Oh, that's so funny.
And I haven't figured it out, so.
Yeah, I saw his face there for a second. I thought he was joining us.
No, he's actually in Brazil right now.
Oh, good for him.
Yeah.
I'm jealous. So I want to start out today with you, Gary.
Mhm.
So we've kind of been on tour. I don't know if you guys follow us on social media or been paying attention, but we've been on tour visiting churches that are part of our network, new churches that we want to introduce our network to. And so Gary was one of the first churches we went to go visit. And Connie and I were so impressed by all the work that Gary's already done and is working on. And so Gary, I want you to share some of your things that are best practices that you do. Make sure you for sure talk about that doorbell system, because I was really impressed. Such a simple solution, but such a great solution. And then lastly, I want to hear how you feel that being a part of this community has helped you enhance what you're already doing.
Okay, thanks. Well, actually, it's not my doing. It's really God's doing, and really my team. You know, I've been blessed with a fantastic team, and it's made the safety team a joy to be part of, because they're people that are so interested in serving, and just have a heart for God. So, but I'm just kind of a person that directs a little bit here and there, but it's the team that does all the work. So, and Mary, thanks for being here. And I probably don't thank our team in person enough for the work they do. So, but the main thing that I had learned when we started was you have to get the pastors and the elder boards buy-in. And we were blessed because our pastor is fairly young and progressive, and he when I started Search Security in Florida, we go there for the winter, and I was attending a church there, and they asked me to be on their security team. It was a very, very initial team, and they didn't really do much at all, but it gave me the thought to bring it back to Chicago. So I approached the elder board and the pastor, and they were full on 100%, and they've continued to give our team support. So, you know, and you don't expect to do everything all at once. That was another thing I learned was, you know, you have all these ideas, but it comes slowly, and you can't really do everything all at once. So just do the simple things first. And I think one of the problems with elder boards and pastors is they think it's going to cost them money, and so I approached them that it would be a very low cost, simple undertaking, and so they were very glad to hear about that.
I'm
And
sure.
you know, even and just planning, just having a plan. We had a emergency fire evacuation drill for the whole church, and that doesn't cost you anything. And so you have to do some planning with the ushers or the hospitality team, and it took 3 or 4 minutes, and it was kind of a social event because we all gathered outside in the emergency gathering area, and the pastor had provided a few dozen donuts, and so it was a really nice social thing too. So our next thing will be a emergency lockdown. So as far as the bell,
You did that with the whole church. Are you talking congregation or staff?
the whole church. So after a Sunday service, we had told them ahead of time, and we said, this is what we're going to do in case of emergency, and then this is where you're going to go, and these are the people you should follow, and so we just had an evacuation drill. Everybody left orderly, calmly, and went to the emergency gathering area. So, but it was something simple like that. And another thing is like locking the doors. Our church, the doors were always kind of open, you know, and it took a while. It took probably 6 months to get the message across that we came up with a motto: every door, all the time. So it's got to be locked. And 3-4 months into it, you know, one usher would say, "Oh, I didn't know that door was supposed to be locked, you know, the outside door." So, "Oh yeah, that's supposed to be locked." Yeah. So the doorbell, I think it was in Secure Church Meeting, or maybe one of the books I read, they recommended some way for the pastor to notify the security, what we call our safety team, that there's something going wrong. And So because the pastor is looking right at all the congregants and we're just seeing the back of their heads. So, and he might see something that we don't. So I don't know, we researched one system and it was like $600 or $700. It was a special radio that you pressed a button and it had pre-recorded messages and sent it out to the staff. And that was really not practical. So we looked a little harder, came out with just a simple wireless doorbell. And at the time it was $20. It's now 28, the same thing as 28. But it meant to for people that don't want to wire their doorbells, you could have a front door and a back door, and you can set different tones for the front and back so you know where people are. And it's just I think it's 2 AA batteries, and they last at least a year. We test it once a week. So we have one doorbell Velcroed to the underside of the lectern for the pastor, and then the receiver in the lobby, and then the other doorbell is in the children's ministry, and they have a tone like an old school bell, and then the pastor has a regular tone. So we know if someone presses a button, we know from what area it's coming from.
Yeah, I was very impressed by that. I was like, this is such a simple solution. And
Yeah.
like, whoever thought of it, kudos to them. That was a great idea. Yeah.
And we've had it for like 3 years now, and I think we replaced the battery once, and we tested it just once a week, and so it's something simple.
Yeah.
But going to seminars, there's a lot of resources either online like Toolkit or Secure Church kind of got us started too. And the insurance company for our church, I think it's something like Brotherhood something.
Brotherhood Mutual.
Right, Brotherhood Mutual. They have a manual that was it's a spiral manual, probably 3 inches thick, on just about anything you could think of with church safety. And the pastor basically had this on his bookshelf. He probably never opened it. So when I asked about starting a safety team, he handed me this book, and I said, "Oh, after I read through it, this is fantastic." So he was happy that at least someone was able to open it and put it to use.
Yeah. Blow the dust off of it, right?
Yeah. So a few things we learned along the way. Selection criteria, and this we've been told this and read this a number of times. It should be pastor initiated. So the pastor should select a candidate, and then we do background checks and interviews and reference checks. But one of the recommendations was the person should be a member of the church for at least a year. And pastor had recommended a really nice guy, but him and his family had only been coming for about 3 months or so. And I think it was just too much for him. He just I think was kind of overwhelmed, and so he actually left the church, I questioned the pastor a little bit. I said, most people say they should be a member of a year, and he said, no, he's fine, he's a good guy and everything. Okay, and he left. So he kind of apologized and said, yeah, I think we should stick with that rule 1 year. Yeah.
So what was he recommending them for? Safety team?
Yes, right. Yeah. So he joined our safety team, lasted about 3 months. And not only did he lead the safety team, he left the church, him and his family. And there was little things going on here and there, but maybe some misunderstandings. But so, I think be a little selective on who you, who you invite to be on the team. So
Absolutely.
There's only 7 members in our team, but we're still able to cover every Sunday without trouble because these people are just so willing to serve. Hey, Mike, how you doing? Yeah,
Audio is still connected.
all right.
There
Good
he
to
is.
see him. Another great resource, Mike. Yeah. He's still connecting. For those of you who don't know, Mike, Officer Mike is on the Place of Worship Safety Advisory Team of the Chicago Police Department. And he came to our church recently and did a full assessment of our facilities and then gave a great presentation. And just today I got their written recommendations and vulnerabilities of our church. So great resource. Yeah. So I think that's all I didn't prepare anything. So if anybody has any questions, go to it.
Can you guys hear me well?
Yes, yes,
Yes.
Mike.
Yeah, sorry, I was in a bad location driving. I waited till I get home to relog in again. So I just wanted to check in and see how everybody's doing and hopefully everybody's being safe out there.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us.
We're trying to cut down on your paperwork, Mike.
Yeah, well, that's I have a lot of paperwork, believe me.
Keeping them safe.
Yeah,
One thing that was kind of a little disappointing. About maybe 6-8 months ago, I had the idea of starting what I call the Local Church Alert Network. And so I wrote probably 25 closest churches to our church and explained that, we would set up kind of an informal understanding that we would all be on the same page, that if there's something happened in their church that they were uncomfortable with or, had issues with, they would, in a very confidential and a need to know basis, send out to the other 25 churches, what they were concerned about. And I got one response. And that one response was, I think, prompted by it's a pastor's personal friend. So, and then for Mike's presentation, we also sent out 25 of invitation flyers, and I think we got three responses, three different churches. So I'm not sure what the story is there. Okay, it's summertime and some people are busy and things like that, but you would think you'd get more than 3 out of 25 people that are interested in protecting their church congregation. So I just don't get that.
So I'll give you a little bit of perspective. So I sit on the board of Secure Church. I've been with them for a long time, and their focus is security, right?
Right.
And even though we know that that's all great, my heart was around how to equip those first line ministries, those ushers, greeters, production people, kids ministries, parking lot people. How do we help them know what to do and potentially spot it before it gets in the worship center, right? So that was our mission we set out on. And I'll tell you, from Secure Church's perspective, from our perspective, it's like pulling teeth to get people to, one, recognize the difference between safety and security, and two, to start taking some action toward it. It is really, really difficult to get people's attention. They think if they have one security guy at their church, they're kind of good to go. We're like, no. You have a lot of problems here. I mean, there's a lot of holes in their protection, but they don't see it that way.
Now,
It's
Mike,
very difficult.
do you also see, do you think, Mike, that it might be that people just don't think it's going to happen to them, or they don't have to worry about it, or what's your thoughts on that?
here is our dilemma, what we deal with on a constant basis, where we are out there promoting our program to all the synagogues, places of worship in the area, and even further, like in the west suburbs, north suburbs, and a lot of people take interest, but a lot of people take pulling teeth to get them to get congregants to come to a class. And the biggest issue we have is when something happens out there in the community, whether it's close to home or even abroad, that's when they want us to do it the most when something happens elsewhere. Instead of being proactive, they're reactive because something happens somewhere else. Then it's like a rush to get a class in, or can you come in a week or two to presentation on active threat? That's the biggest deal, stuff we deal with when we're doing our programs around.
Did Mike freeze?
Did you guys hear me at all or no?
Yes, yes.
He did, he froze for a little bit.
Yep.
I feel as though in many of these situations, we're like the bell ringers. You know, so far it hasn't happened to them, so it's not a
Right.
problem. So
Right?
we're ringing
Right.
a bell and they're like, yeah, you know, I hear it, I hear it, I hear it. But like Mike said, you know, if they have an incident, then they want you to come right away.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's very challenging, Gary, to get people's attention. And it is, to your point, disappointing. I mean, we have these conversations, we're on tour, going to talk to churches, and they go, oh yeah, our security people fine. Oh, our security is great. Oh, this is wonderful. And I'm like, no, it's not. You don't have any of the tools to use. Yeah.
And one other,
Don't be discouraged, I guess is my point. Like,
Yeah.
keep reaching out. Yeah. And we do this every month for free. You would think we would fill up a Zoom room at least
Yeah.
with people who want to talk about it, but yeah, that's not what happens all the time.
one last comment. When we first started, the first couple of years that we had this safety team, we really did not include what we call the hospitality team or the ushers. And we realized, at least I realized after a couple of years, that was a big mistake.
Yeah.
First, there's a lot more of them than us, and they're all over the place. And to exclude them from our training, our drills, and it was a mistake. And so now we actually huddle with them, and we've gone out. The two teams have gone out for lunch after church, and so I think the more you include them and bring them into the circle, the better.
Absolutely. Yeah. We've always been focused on making sure we include those teams, because to your point, they will see more. Potentially they'll see it first because there's more of them. So we call them the eyes and ears of the security team. Also, it's to help the security team stay focused on what they should be focused on: pastoral protection, protection of children's ministry, the vulnerable population, as opposed to getting pulled into all kinds of other things around the church, particularly a small church. If somebody sees and knows the security people or safety team people, they'll pull them in everything. There's no tissue in the bathroom. There's no, that's not what they're supposed to be doing. They need to stay focused on what they're focused on. So we want to equip those other ministries to be able to make those identifications.
Gary, I'm sorry, Mike, go ahead.
No, I'm good. Go ahead.
Well, Gary, I don't know if you saw what I stated on our social media post about our visit last week to your church. But when I walked up to the door, and I forget the gentleman's name who opened it, the first thing he said was, "Welcome back, Connie." The fact that he remembered my name.
Oh, yes.
Totally impressed. I just, honestly, that just made me smile. My heart was smiling.
Yes.
Because I had been seen the first time I was there, and I was being seen and remembered the second time.
Yeah.
So
Well,
valuable.
You're talking about Scott Nelson. He's one of the elders.
Okay, gotcha.
This guy is really something, because I'll be standing with him at a door, and someone will be walking up the walkway, and I'll go, oh, who's this? Oh, that's so and so. He was here about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I go, what? So he knows everybody. And not only that, one day there was someone that left her lights on. He knew whose car what person owned the car and where to find them. And I said, do you even know everybody's car? He goes, yeah, pretty much.
But I should add that the first time we were there, you remembered me from being on, Toolkit Tuesday.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
didn't
Not
remember
too good at
any.
names, not too good at names, but yes.
I know. Thank you for
Sometimes
that.
faces is good. That's good.
Being seen and remembered is a gift, and I want to thank you for the gift that you
Yeah.
gave.
Yeah, that's a big deal. So we're going to launch into our presentation. It's actually, if you were here last month, you saw this, but I want us to dig a little deeper. We're going to talk about the components of an emergency response plan and things we need to add. Mike, we shared a little bit with you when we met you or saw you last week at Village Point. The event that we're doing in August, we're hoping that our attendees walk away with a custom emergency response plan for their church. So every month we're talking about a different segment of that ERP. And so I want to talk through those today. So I'm gonna jump into the presentation. Before I do, let me just talk about one more thing. So I got the chance to speak to a coalition of pastors about a week ago. There were about 12 pastors in attendance. And one of them talked about a situation that happened at his church about a year and a half ago at this point, where two families went to the same church. Everybody from the husband's side, everybody from the wife's side. It was just one big family. They all were at the same church. So not unusual for everyone to see them at church together because they were all there every Sunday. Well, after service, the husband shot and killed the wife in the parking lot and then turned the gun on himself. And a second pastor talked about a current situation he has with a stalker who is currently stalking a church member. So these things are happening. The more I'm immersed in the conversations, the more I'm in the churches, the more I'm talking to people, the more alive the issues are. Not that I didn't know they were there, but these are now people I know and I'm touching and I'm talking to. So why we do this is exactly why we do this. I've been doing safety for almost 30 years. Started off doing safety on the occupational side, always been involved in churches because my dad was a pastor. And so to have my vocation and avocation kind of clash together has been a blessing for me. But the more we hear this, the more I'm convinced that they need us and they need Mike and they need everybody to keep driving these messages forward. And to Gary's point, why can't we get a whole bunch more churches engaged? Because they're having a lot of problems. And that's not a conversation that would have came up in passing. It's because we're in there asking questions. So as we're walking through some of this, if you think of, oh yeah, we had this particular issue or we're having this problem, just maybe let's just talk about it in generic form and maybe somebody's doing something at a different church that we're not doing. We had a challenge at our church. We were opening up a new campus and we were having a grand opening and everybody had t-shirts for the grand opening. And people were desperate for volunteers. They were so excited. This guy came the Saturday, then he came back Sunday for the grand opening. He was like, oh yeah, I love it here. I'm gonna stay here. I wanna work here. Somebody handed him a t-shirt and he jumped in and started volunteering and moving things around and helping put food out. Well, you don't know who he is. Nobody's vetting him. He hasn't had a background check, right? Like he's already infiltrated. And now he's blended in and no one can tell me who he is because he has on the same t-shirt as everybody else. So I feel like churches, we have the heart for always wanting to be open and welcoming, but that always still has to have a little bit of precaution with it. Like, what does that mean? You can't like just jump in. So anyway, things to think about. So I'm gonna share my screen and then we can talk through some of this. Once I share my screen, I'm not going to be able to see you. So if somebody can just tell me if they can see the screen. And as I'm talking, jump in if you have a question or a comment. And please talk back to me because all I'm going to see is this PowerPoint. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Great. All right. So I don't know what's happening. Okay, so we went through the introductions already. This is the ERP table of contents based on the ERPs I have written in the past. So at the very beginning is a church safety policy statement. Does anybody have one of those already written? Are they using it? Have they adopted it? Anybody? And I'm gonna want to hear from you on most of these, like Gary, you guys have one?
No, unfortunately, that's one of the things we have to work, the Brotherhood Mutual talked about a manual and has templates and, a policy book, and that's one of our things that we really have to work on.
Okay. Yeah, it's just important to say that, this is how we will manage safety. And then the plan summaries at the beginning, like what is the objectives of the plan? One of the other ones is weekdays. So when we have done some research, particularly through Secure Church, we've talked about, and I believe the number is 65% of church violence, at least it was pre-pandemic, happens during the week. And so like if you have staff at your church, what does that mean for the staff? How do they manage it on a weekday when there's not security team present? What does that look like? There's a segment that we do around regional evacuation, and this happens around storms. So just think about in the Midwest, even over winter, we had all those tornadoes in the Midwest. So if we were to have that in our area, what's the perimeter that we're going to take people in? Are we going to open the church? Are we going to be a resource to the community? Just things to add into your plan. And then that's for church staff and key volunteers. We talk about if you're going to leave the region, you're going to leave the area, you're going to go to where your family is because your house was impacted. Who needs to be around to still kind of run an emergency evacuation facility for if you're going to utilize your building? We talk about radio protocols and channel assignments. What channel is the children's ministry on? What channel are the greeters on? What's your emergency channel you're going to go to if you need to flip into emergency mode? One for me for radio protocol, and we'll get into that a little bit later, is earpieces. A lot of people don't wear them. They just have the radios and they talk through the radios. But if you go into a incident command, for lack of a better word, you're going to need to wear an earpiece so that everybody in the congregation isn't hearing what's happening. Another thing for that is that tool we talked about before, Slack. We'll talk about that again. And then radio communication is one that we want to drill on and one that we want to talk about and train on. We had an incident once where a lady said, one of our guest people called and said, there's a lady here. She has her children with her. Her husband's on site. He's not supposed to be here and he has a gun. So everybody starts running, takes off, gets over to the area where these people are. And that's not at all the message. The message was a lady's here with her children. She's going through a divorce with her husband. She has the paperwork she wants to give to the church. He's not supposed to be here when the kids are here and he carries a gun. See how that's so different? So radio communication is very important and what people are saying on the radios. Contact and security and medics. Do you guys have medics, Gary?
We have two great nurses, registered nurses, and everybody on our team is CPR AED certified.
Oh, so great. So great. Yeah. So we want to talk about that. We'll be talking about that more and how the medics are involved. What's an emergency and what's a non-emergency, defining that for them when you're contacting them is very important. Fire extinguisher locations and map locations for severe weather and AED locations. There's also an app for that. And then medical emergencies versus and non-life-threatening medical emergencies. So I think I shared this once before. We had one night when we were in the middle of service and someone had a heart attack in the middle of service. And we were able to create something that night that we call the human barrier. And human barrier was simply our guest teams coming and putting their back to the person who was ill and their face to the crowd so that the emergency teams and the EMTs had some anonymity and could work on the person. The person had some privacy. And then they got the person out and kind of the worship team came out, just did soft music until we were able to move the patient. But those are things we want to talk about, how those things get handled. We've had so many of them that happen right at the end of a church service. Everybody's leaving, something happens. How do you stop people from stopping and gawking and that whole piece? And so training those first line ministries. The ABCs of first aid we talk about. Of course, armed intruder. Emergency contacts is a big one. And that's like in the, be a part of the ERP tables, right? So who are we calling for what? It's not always the pastor. Who gets the call if there's a fire? Who gets the call if there's an emergency at the church? If there is an active shooter, who's going to talk to the media? Where's the media going to be staged? All that's part of emergency contacts, and those people need to be identified in there. What's our kids ministry response to any of these emergencies? Production team response. I don't know if you guys remember when Roe v. Wade happened and protesters were coming to all the churches. Well, there was one where they took over Joel Osteen's church. So they had on t-shirts and stuff written on their shirts. They pulled their shirts up and they made all this noise and they literally stopped his service, like took over his service. And so we talked with the production teams about what would we do if protesters came to the service? How do we not lose control of that service? A couple things: get the music going, get people on their feet, give the security team time to bring them out of the service without losing full control of the service. So those are reasons to engage the production team. There's some checklist around that in terms of whether or not you're streaming your service. So if you're streaming your service and that happens, cut the live feed immediately. So some of those things we talked through. There's scripts. Scripts are.
Angela, can I interrupt for a second?
Sure, go ahead.
You know, one suggestion Mike had at our assessment, because we had heard to cut the live stream also, but he recommended that this, especially if it was an active shooter, to keep the live stream going, and so the local first responders would have a view of inside the worship center what was going on. So, and it was interesting because the night commander of the local police department came to the CPD's presentation, and he was very interested in hearing that we had live feed. They had a video that he could log on to, and his first responders could see what was going on in the room before they even got there. So just a difference of opinion there.
Yeah, that's
We had mentioned that. Sorry, Angela. We had mentioned that because in Colleyville, that's how the police were notified, because a person watching the live the worship at that synagogue called 911 because no one else could within the congregation. Then when the guy took the rabbi and a couple people, I guess against their will with the gun, so that's what helped them out in Colleyville.
So Mike, is there any other way though that you would be able to access the stream without broadcasting it? So here's my concern. I'm at church, my husband's at home, and he's gonna live watch somebody injure me or his kids. That to me is like gotta be creating more trauma for the families. So is there any other way? I don't know the answer. I'm just asking your opinion. Any other way that you guys could tap that live stream without it being broadcast? Like, okay, somebody saw it happen, so yeah, they call 911. You know what's happening, but is there any other way for you to get the live stream without it being broadcast to everybody else?
That's going to be, it would need to be cut at the source within the congregation, wherever it may be. But like in Chicago, some synagogues or places of worship, they have cameras that are technologically savvy with our OAMC center downtown. And if there was an incident taking place, they can tap into those systems as long as you have the right software to watch or view something live going on. So when the first responders go there, we would know where the guy might be live time in the actual place of worship, wherever it may be, and what he's wearing and where the police need to respond to, instead of looking around the building for this subject. They won't know right where to go. That's the only thing I can give you as far as advice. I mean, as far as the live streaming, you'd have to have someone cut it probably from within like, let's say Village Point, you have to have someone who's live streaming it from with there, kill it from within there. So now, kill the live feed. That's, I think, the only way you can do that. I mean, I'm not a technologically huge savvy guy, but that's my understanding. I would assume.
Yeah. Yeah, I see how it could be very helpful to police and very traumatic to the public and to the
No, I
family.
agree. No, I agree.
Yeah,
It's like some of these bad guys with the GoPros. They go do like in Australia or
Right.
in New Zealand, I'm saying, where the guy went with the GoPro into the place of worship and started massacring all those people. I mean, I didn't want to see that. I mean, I saw the video, but did I want to
Right.
see that? No. I mean,
Yeah.
none of us want
Right.
to see that.
and imagine that that's your family though.
Exactly, right?
You're at home, you didn't go to church today, but you're gonna stream it because you gotta go to work this afternoon. And you live watch your family, right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So that's kind of where we are. But I do know that there are systems. I mean, I've been involved in like setting up some systems where we can track the suspect and you can see where they are, and that helps the cops. But you're there and you're watching it on the internal camera system versus it's being broadcast out to the homes. So
Right.
yeah, I mean, I think, yeah,
There's
So-
pros and there's cons. There's pros and cons to everything. So I mean,
Absolutely. yeah, I agree. Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
sure.
Safety at a glance, we talked about before. It just talks about quick steps to handle medical emergencies, fire, weather, armed intruder. We'll look at that. And then incident command structure, again, that's kind of where you plug in all the boxes of who your mutual aid partners are, who's going to talk to the media, that kind of thing. There's an incident command roadmap in here, and then reunification. So of this list, how many of these do you feel like you need help with? Are there still pieces that you need to fill in on your plan? You feel like you have this all kind of figured out? Anybody?
Well, one thing that that we I really appreciated was when the CPD people came, the local commander also showed up,
Yes.
and that was the first contact we'd ever had with them, which was kind of amazing. And the guy was very helpful. And one thing that Angelia had recommended, and I didn't think that it was really practical, but giving a map to the local police department. And so I questioned him. I said, "Hey, you think you would be interested in a floor plan?" He goes, "Oh yeah." I said, "We got a binder in the squad cars with all the floor plans of all the local schools." And I said, "No kidding." I said, "Yeah, okay." So he took our floor plan, and it was going to be added into to his apartment. We also, if we call first responders, we have a safety sash that the safety team puts on. And I told him, and he said, "Oh, let me see it." So I put it on, and he actually took a picture of me, and he was going to share that with his department. So I mean, that kind of interaction with the local police it was something that we didn't do, and I found it to be super helpful and important.
Good. Yeah. Having that relationship with them. I mean, I talk to people all the time, even if they come by or, depending on where you are in the city, how busy or overwhelmed that district is. We have a couple churches where they literally just make their loops while they're in service, or they come by and they have a cup of coffee and park their car there for a second. I mean, all those things are deterrents. And, having them know your building, understand your building. Some of them use the buildings to train in. I know a big church on the south side, they go there and they do some training. One's downtown. And that's very helpful too, because that means they know like the ins and outs of the building a little bit. So that's good.
Yeah, Angelia, we had one thing. So in 24, Roger and I always preach to these officers, especially the younger ones, that if you have downtime, if you need to go do a report, go in a synagogue parking lot, go in a church parking lot, go somewhere where you make yourself visible, make yourself a deterrent, sitting in that lot doing paperwork. Anything helps the police when they're visible. It deters a crime like you wouldn't believe. So we always recommend that to officers when they're, either maybe eat their lunch in their car or just, take a 15-minute personal and then, just sit and relax, and then, or even go inside and make some small talk with whoever's inside to get a cup of coffee, like you said, or a donut, whatnot. You know, it always makes the community and the relationship between them and the police that much stronger and better, as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. And we used to always say to our guest teams, like, we don't know what condition the heart of that officer's in, right?
Right.
And so
Right.
even being in the space, sometimes they're grateful just to be in the space, to get some visibility and be seen and have that cup of coffee, have a conversation. So it's helpful for, absolutely, I agree. All right, so I'm gonna move to the next slide. Some of you have seen this already. This is what we call our emergency timeline, safety versus security. And that's why we drive home the point, we're not a security team. We're not a security group, we're a safety group. So all of these pieces have been designated. So safety planning is a safety function, right? You're 95% more likely to survive an event if you have a plan. So that's a safety function. Ministry training is a safety function. Training all the ministries that we talked about, all those first line ministries. The actual event is when the security team jumps in. Something happens, somebody called the security team, they came over, they took a look, they needed to respond. But at the point the first responders show up, the security team stands down. First responders take care of the event, and then the post-event happens, and then we're right back to safety, which is part of the plan for the reunification. Okay? So these are part of the components of the plan. So the components I went over in that long list, but planning, there's no guarantee that what we plan is the scenario that will occur. So the objective of the planning is to just raise consciousness, raise awareness, normalize the conversation around emergencies. People tend not to talk about it. I remember when we first started putting programs together, people would say to me, thank you so much for talking about it. I think about it every time I drive on this campus. I think about it every time I come to church, but nobody was talking about it. So just normalizing the conversation for people. In a smaller congregation, you can do a whole congregation fire drill. That's going to be challenging in a really big church. So, but just letting people know that you have a plan is important. This is the incident command structure that I've talked about a couple times. There's blanks on our website. These are the things, if you don't have templates already, please start pulling the templates down and working through them as we work toward the August 5th event. The objective is to leave with a custom plan for your church. So who is going to be your safety officer? Just because they're not the safety officer normally for the church doesn't mean they're not in an incident. These incident roles are not necessarily the roles that people hold on a day-to-day basis. In the pastoral care box, I keep saying, if the pastor is on stage and there is an active shooter or something devastating and bomb threat, and that pastor doesn't know where his family is, where's his wife, where's his kids, he is limpid to pastor you in that moment. So we set up what we call mutual aid partners, and one of them is Salvation Army, which is why we're partnering with them and hosting it at their facility. They will deploy chaplains to you in the moment to help you pastor, shepherd, and also work with families for family and victim assistance centers if we need to set those up. So that is a great resource, and they're willing to help with that. And it doesn't matter what size your church is. If you have multiple campuses, I've worked with churches with multiple campuses, where each of those campus pastors are on their respective stages at the same time. So just because you have more pastors doesn't mean that you have more care in that moment. So having a partner like Salvation Army is a great resource. So this is blank. Who's your public information officer? Again, who's going to handle the media? Who knows the building? Who's your facilities person? Where are there chemicals? Where is there helium for, you've been blowing up kids' balloons, but somebody's set something afire. Where's that located in the building? Those kinds of things. So you want to have this kind of filled out. Training, probably the most important component. People will either rise to the occasion or fall to their training. So on our website, we have something called safety moments. They're like 60 to 90 second little blurbs on different topics. We're going to add some more in there soon. If you guys have topics in mind that you want us to record, Some people use them and show them in their pre-service before church. Some people email them out with their weekly email bulletins that they're going to send out to their volunteers. There's situational training, there's classroom style training, but training people what to look for and what to do. Drills is another one. Gary talked a little bit about their fire drills. We want to definitely drill the folks in those ministries. So the drills can be tabletop. I suggest tabletop drills for senior pastors and leadership and boards of directors. Not necessarily a physical training drill, but definitely a physical training drill for people who would need to be first responders in the moment. Again, greeters, ushers, production folks, definitely kids ministry people to get involved in doing an actual drill. Education is ongoing. That's back to those safety moments. That's kind of that little box in the middle, and the videos are very beneficial. So again, if you have topics that you'd like us to explore, then please submit those, let us know. Technology is very helpful, and we talked about this. So Pulse Point is the one for the AEDs up in the top right. It works everywhere. It's not proprietary. It'll tell you where the closest AED is in a mall or in an airport. If you're traveling with children, if you're traveling with the elderly, that's definitely a very good tool. The one on the bottom left in purple, Slack, I love because you can set it up by team. So security has a channel, and ushers have a channel, and greeters have a channel, and production has a channel, so they can talk to each other without disturbing service. Or I know our security team uses it and puts like suspicious person in there. This person showed up, they were in their trunk 3 times, blah, blah, here's their picture. Well, now 20 security people have the picture, as opposed to them running around showing it to people on their phone. So I really like Slack a lot. That incident command sheet that I showed earlier is inside of another group that is a crisis group. Once you've identified who's on your crisis team, you can put all those documents in there. People can access them literally as they are walking. And then Form Stack is in the middle. So if you're not already using something like this to capture incidents, whether it is an injury or something has happened, just having an incident command, or I'm sorry, an incident form so that you know and capture that information. Be helpful for insurance purposes too. Coordination between ministries, between departments, with your first responders, with your mutual aid partners. If you're in a building that has other tenants, are they going to follow your plan? Are they going to follow their plan? Are they going to follow a building plan? That's all necessary. So coordination is the big deal. Making sure everybody's on the same page about what will happen. And to your point, Gary, I really like the community idea. I'd started working on that with another church, kind of putting together all the major, not just churches, but businesses, colleges, everything that's in that area. You guys back up right to that hospital. I mean, what does that mean? Can you utilize any of that facility if you had to? They're 24/7, 365. That's probably a good coordination partner. Do you guys work with them at all?
No, we haven't. No.
Yeah, that's probably a great partner for you. Communications, the emergency plan should be communicated to the volunteers, the staff, mutual aid partners, parents, specifically for children's ministries. If you can tell parents beforehand, doesn't mean they're going to adhere to it. I have a 31-year-old. If I'm in the same building that he's in and there's an emergency, my instinct is going to be to go to my son. That's going to be my instinct, and every other parent's instinct. But if we can start educating them early enough to say, we have a plan, your children are going to get evacuated, here's where they're going to be, here's where you can pick them up, it could potentially cut down on the chaos. Because if they go into lockdown, we're not going to open up a lockdown room to let a parent in because they're hysterical in the hallway. And to the point that Mike made when they were doing the presentation, you're just more of a moving target if you are running around in the hallways. So if we can get the communication plans designed and communicated and shared with those groups earlier before they ever need them, that would be helpful. Things to work on. OAA. Anybody remember what that one means? Come on.
Maybe something I observe, I don't know.
That's good. Anybody else remember what it means? LaDonna?
I know.
Of course you know,
I
Connie.
got it.
Of course you do. So it stands for observe, assess, act. We walk through, what are you observing? Ominous looking clothing, looking right through you, not having a conversation, seems to be on a mission. Their backpack looks too heavy, all those things. How do you assess it? Always two people, always one with some form of communication, preferably a radio. And then act is, what do you do to move toward engaging the security team? So there's steps to that, which we can review and we'll talk about at conference. These are all the things I just said. I realized those were in there. Tools, we talked about some of them already. This is just a schedule of pre-service safety moments. And that's what I was talking about earlier. So one of the safety moments is OAA, suspected intoxicated guests. What does it mean if you have a mosh pit for a concert? If you're renting your venue out, is it your safety protocols that the renter is going to use? Is it the protocols, their own protocols they're going to use? How do you coordinate that? So whenever you're having services, people typically do these as pre-service huddle safety conversations. Safety at a glance, you've seen this, we've talked about it. There's a blank on the website. You can go in and fill it out for your organization. It's a great training tool for those first line ministries. Again, how do you want them to respond to medical, fire, weather? Make sure they're getting, they know where supplies are if it's a medical situation. Are they getting the incident form filled out? So you have that kind of thing. So vehicle description form, it's on the site. It's blanks. We keep these kind of by the doors. Also a person description, you're able to just write down what you saw, hand that off to security and or first responders. People tend to forget in the heat of the moment. And this is what it looks like in Slack. So if you look on the left-hand side, you see all the channels, names. There's one for the guest teams, one for the regional teams, one for the incident command. So you can go into your own channel and have your own conversation without engaging others if they don't need to know yet. This is Toolkit Tuesday. We're already here. We don't need to talk about that. All right, that's the end of my presentation. Comments, concerns, challenges. How you guys doing on getting it done?
Well, as usual, I picked up a couple of good tips. You know, every time you go to a seminar, or I once had a mentor in my training, and he was a great example. When we went to a conference, he said, if you don't pick up on one item and actually put it into practice, it was a waste of your time to go to the conference. And so I was made that a point, and even if it's only one simple thing, but you know, take it in, listen, get back to your place and put it into practice.
Yeah, that's the biggest part. Is I feel like people go, and that's why we're making our conference a working conference. Like we're going to work through this, through the templates, through the questions, through the scenarios, because I feel like people come and they listen and they go, yeah, that's a good idea. But then you go back in a month and go, so did you add your policy statement? So did you add your incident command structure? So did you add? And people are like, no, I didn't get around today. I like to talk about this stuff, but I really would love for you to do it more. any scenarios you guys dealing with right now where you go, oh, it'd be a good thing to add that, or we'd like to hear more about that? Anything come to mind? And Mike, that one's for you too. You're in and out of synagogues, churches, anything you think of like, oh yeah, I think they need this.
No, I'm thinking.
Yeah, you see a lot.
We see a lot, yeah. I mean, we see, I mean, for example, today, this doesn't place of worship related, but we were down at Department of Public Health today on the south, kind of in the medical district, and they have zero security there whatsoever. They have a guard at the door and that is it. The doors don't close properly. There's no cameras, there's no alarm system on the place, and they have a couple people they fired, or one's going to get fired in about 2 months. Another one was let go already, and they're worried about this person coming back and causing problems, which this person has done already. But we give our assessments to the Allison Arwadi. I'm going to be emailing her tonight about our assessment today, and this is what you should do, our recommendations. And the thing of it is, they want security upgrades and stuff like that, but the city has the money to put these ideas in place, which drives me nuts, because if they're fearing for their lives or safety and they
Right.
want this stuff, why can't the city step up until something happens, like we mentioned earlier in these conversations, that we rather be proactive rather than reactive if something happens, because the moment something happens, the next day they're going to find $20,000 to upgrade something. I guarantee it, you know.
The way it always happens. I remember
That-
talking to churches and they would always say to me, we can't lock all our doors. That doesn't make any sense. We're never going to lock all the doors until COVID happened. And what'd they do?
Yep.
It's like, okay, you can do it. You're choosing not to do it, but here's a good way to do it. I love the way that Village Point does it.
Yep.
Well,
Christ,
Mike,
Christ Community does it. I've seen a couple other churches where there's someone there to greet you and you say hello and they open the door for you. I had no idea the door was locked. They greeted me, they said hello, they opened the door. The door's locked though. But
Yep.
it gave them that space and time to assess. This person doesn't look like a threat, I can let them in, or they do and I can't, right? So yeah, but they always say they can't find the money or time for anything until something happens.
Yep.
Anybody got any other questions, comments?
well, Mike made a good comment on on a presentation. He said that, churches are slow to change. They resist change. And one of the things he said with Catholic churches, they all had like 10 points of entry. And, some people have been coming through that door for the last 15 years. And when you tell them they only have to come through this one door, it's tough. But he gave the example of, with after 9/11, the airport security, you didn't go to the gate anymore. You had to have a ticket and you got to head screened and take your shoes off and everything. So people adjust to that and the realities. So thanks for pointing that out, Mike.
Sure, and that's just like in Rogers Park with the synagogues. When we started doing our place of worship program back in the end of 2018, beginning of 19, all the synagogues were welcoming, and we understand that, but none of them locked their doors, or they have multiple points of entry and exits. Well, like Roger mentioned, during the presentation, every single synagogue in Rogers Park locks their doors now because, not all of them have taken our class, but majority of them have, and they learn from other people as well. But now one point of entry, one point of exit, you control your egress, all that stuff, and it works out well. And it's a lifesaver, believe me.
Absolutely. And Mike, do you, I don't know how, if you get into the conversation, but do you feel like churches and synagogues have emergency response plans, or they actually need this information, the plans?
I don't think they have a lot of them. I think they need them, to be quite honest with you. They have their ushers and greeters, and they have their select few that might do this on a weekly basis or bi-weekly, depending on how many people they have volunteering. But yeah, a lot of these churches and places of worship do not have an EAP or anything like that at all. I know that for sure.
That's good. Well, hopefully we can help.
I hope so.
Anything else? Any other questions? Mary, you're on mute. Mary, you're on mute.
I guess I have a question, and I'm not sure how it would be communicated unless a member of the congregation would share that with someone. But you had mentioned that I believe that you knew of or had heard of a story where there was a lady who was being stalked, or someone was being someone's a victim of domestic violence. And of course, that's something that you would want to be aware of, but I guess that information has to come from the individual who's in trouble.
Right.
And how willing are they, I guess, to approach an elder or a pastor or someone, on a safety group? And I realize there's a large area of confidentiality involved in that. It's like how, I don't know. I just am curious in terms of how do you need to approach the congregation or something like that and say, hey, if there is anyone who is in fear of a situation, you need to let us know. It'll be kept in confidence. I mean, even when you go into a hospital these days, they ask you those
Do you
kinds of
feel
questions
safe?
on admission. Yeah, do
Yeah.
you feel safe
Yeah.
at home? So if someone is in a situation where they feel like there's an issue at home, whether it's with a spouse or with an older child or something,
Yeah, so I don't think you want to draw it out, because then you have limited resources to deal with it, right? If there's 25,
correct.
I don't really want to be involved in that. If it comes to you though, you want to get as much information as possible. So in this case, when this pastor was sharing with me, I said, well, just make sure you get a picture of the person and try to
Yes.
get it to the security team and to the parking lot team and to the greeters and ushers. And he said, well, we don't know what the person looks like. I said, well, the person who's being stalked knows what they look like. So get them to go to their Facebook and get you a picture and tell those frontline ministries, hey, this person should not be on campus, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think you
But-
want to call it out, because otherwise, unless you have a department, and some churches do, some bigger churches have departments where they just do cases like that, but you don't have the resources for that. I wouldn't call it out, like make that kind of announcement at church. But if you know about it, because church is community, right? So somebody's had in small group together and they've mentioned it. If that gets to you, I would say to make sure that you have some sort of visual on what this person looks like and that they shouldn't be there.
Okay. Are there any legal concerns in terms of confidentiality involving that? I mean, if someone were to come to the pastor or to an elder and say, listen, I have concerns about this person, I'm being stalked, I'm being threatened. And then if the church staff takes any action, like you said, in terms of we have images, we've shared that with someone, are there any legal issues that could be interpreted?
I think you should probably talk to insurance company and attorney, because there's some things that I believe you would be considered mandated reporter for, but I'm not.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you need to talk to your attorney and insurance company.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Anybody got anything else? Well, we're gonna wrap it up. I wish you happy ERP creating. If you need help, we're right here. August 5th again is the conference. We're gonna work on all of this. I don't know how many people watch the recording and playback, but hopefully they do, and they get to hear this information from tonight. And look forward to everybody joining us in August. Anything else? All right, I'm gonna say good night.